But let's talk about the rise of reform and whether it's going to signal the end of the Conservative Party, whether or not you like the Conservatives, whether you want reform to basically smash them up. 0207 862 2222. We're asking this because there's a brand new poll by YouGov, and it says now Reform are right behind the Conservatives, 1 percentage point away. So look at the papers from this morning. We'll just get a flavour of where we are in the election campaign now. We're going to focus on this polling. So obviously you've got the manifesto launch and Rishi saying don't give Labour a blank cheque, and then you turn the page. This is the Mail, of course, and we mentioned Farage and the open-top bus and the pelting, and then you've got the pictures from the Conservatives' manifesto launch. But what I want to do, if I can, is just move one page further forward to here and look at, this is the bit we're focusing on because it says reform closing gap to 1%? Really? So I was reminded of this picture here. This is a famous thing where Sunak, unbelievably, no photoshopping, Sunak is standing next to the tallest Conservative MP, whose name is Daniel Kaczynski, and the height difference is astonishing. Let's just pull out the Kaczynski photo, turn it into a silhouette, and there we are. We'll put it next to Sunak here to do a little representation of reform, because this is a bit like what reform are. Looming over the Prime Minister here, Farage looking down on Sunak, and Sunak saying, "You're towering over me." Is that the situation? Well, he can take a little bit of comfort. Go back to the Mail, and we're going to look at two of these sets of numbers. They've got some great stats here. And the first one is this, OK? Now, if you look at the state of the parties, Labour 43, Conservatives 21, Reform 15. So that's an average of polls. They are still 6 points behind. The problem, of course, is that every chunk they take out of the Conservatives makes it harder for the Conservatives to fight off Labour and the Liberal Democrats in seats where Labour and the Lib Dems are second. So there's a little bit of comfort there. The thing that's making Rishi Sunak sweat like the guy in Airplane is this. When you ask Conservative members, do you want your party to become more like Reform? Incredibly, 31, nearly a third of them say yes. Why can't they be more like Farage's party? Less likely, 13%. So you'd be more likely as a Conservative to support your own party if it was like someone else's party. And this is really hard for them, Lynn, isn't it? What do they do?
Well, this is the thing. This is classic not listening to their members, to the voters. And so
the ones who elected Liz Truss, that's you. You think they should listen to that lot?
Exactly. No, even before
really?
that, even before that, if we look at the manifesto of 2019, overwhelmingly, people voted for immigration to be brought down. It's gone up, and people were really concerned with the housing crisis. And both of those things the Conservatives have not done anything about. So even when it comes to immigration, they have said we're going to get immigration down. That doesn't mean anything. Whereas Reform have stated clear, they're not afraid, Farage is not afraid, we are going to leave the ECHR, exactly,
rights, yeah.
And that's what people want to hear.
Well, I don't know.
Is it really what people want to hear? Only you say...
Why have they done well then? Why has Reform
hang on.
quickly gone up in the polls?
We'll say a third of Tory... Two-thirds don't, in other words, or whatever. Only a third,
Yeah.
I would say. You know, really that most people... I know you support those policies. The majority of people don't. Look at the polls. There's a big left of centre majority in the country now. If you add up Greens, Lib Dems and Labour, they don't all support these right-wing policies either.
I actually don't think there is. What there is people...
Well, there is. Look at the polls.
People are completely fed up of the Conservative Party.
Well, of course.
And if there was a different voting system, I think that we would see something different.
Before we go on, let's just bring in Christo Fufas, our friend Christo, because we heard basically the Conservative manifesto yesterday, tax cuts, home ownership, immigration caps, but then we still have traditional Tory voters going to Reform. So what's going wrong for them?
Well, I think it's frustrating if you're a traditional Tory voter. Good morning to you all, by the way. I think it's really frustrating because I think that this is the sort of red meat that traditional Conservatives have been crying out for absolutely years, especially from Rishi Sunak in the last couple of years. I mean, this is the sort of stuff that he should have come out with the day that he became Prime Minister, not saved it for the manifesto when no one believes a word that he says. I mean, I agree with the tax cuts. I think perhaps they don't go far enough, but I think that's a good part of the manifesto. Building homes. I mean, it's an absolutely fair point that was just made. The Conservatives have failed on that. A cap on immigration. That's what a lot of people want. That's what's in this manifesto. Whether people believe it or not is another matter. Removing stamp duty for the first £425,000 if you're going to be buying a property, if you're a first-time buyer. That's a traditionally conservative policy. So I think actually there's some really good stuff in there, but I absolutely agree that if you are someone who has been wanting all of this for the last few years, you're going to be very cynical looking at the record as to whether it can be delivered.
Phil, what do you think of that? They're going in the right direction, says Christo.
No one believes it. I'll say this slowly. Last 14 years, the worst government we've had for 100 years. Probably the worst government for 100 years. 5 terrible prime ministers who've made this country just a laughing stock. Can't get a doctor, roads potholes, people can't afford to eat or pay their energy bills, etc., etc. I mean,
And Gordon Brown would have been better.
Nobody believes them anymore. You know, Liz Truss crashed the economy by bringing in unfunded tax bribes. Now, what's he doing in his manifesto? Oh, look. He's going to cut taxes. In the old days, back in the 18th century, they used to stand outside the polling stations and give people free beer and cash to vote for their party. Now they promise tax cuts that we know they can't deliver.
The problem is the Conservatives seem to only care about the top 1%, whereas reform, the reason why they're garnering a lot of support is because Farage...
Nigel Farage, the former merchant banker.
OK, but he's still saying things that people are important. Let's say,
Christo come back in.
For 20,000,
hang on
20,000.
Well, firstly, I would say that all of the parties, and by the way, I agree, not many people agree with the Conservatives, but all of the parties have tax cuts or tax freezes that the Institute for Fiscal Studies have said that they cannot pay for. All of them have that at the moment. The actual £17 billion of tax cuts that are in this manifesto have been costed. It's the government savings that haven't been, but it's wrong to say the tax cuts in this manifesto have not been costed. But all of the parties in general are making promises that they can't keep. Where I think that you don't believe the Institute for Fiscal Studies.
Well, the guy said the tax cuts are there. They're absolutely clear. The mass. To pay for it is in doubt. That's what he said. I watched it on the news last night, Paul Johnson. It's in doubt whether they can make these savings. And also, we don't after 14
Let Christo come back.
Sorry, Christo.
It's the savings that I agree with. This £18 billion of government savings where they're hazy on the detail. But many of the analysts last night said that the tax cuts themselves, the 17 billion, they have been costed because it's far easier to cost how much a tax cut's going to cost than it is to cost what a government saving would be. Where I think, just want to make a quick point about reform, I'm not a fan of Nigel Farage particularly, but I absolutely agree with what's being said as to why people are going to reform, because I think that firstly, their tax policy of removing the lowest paid out of tax altogether, I've argued on your show more times than I care to mention that that's a really good policy. And secondly, I think Reform are saying, perhaps not in the best way and not in a way that is palatable to a lot of people, but what Reform are pointing out to most people is that the NHS, housing, public spending, education, pretty much every single subject that is a big bone of contention in this election, immigration and numbers of people in the UK is a thread that goes through every single issue that we have. That's not demonising the immigrants. That's demonising the fact that governments have failed to keep up with infrastructure.
Yes.
And Reform seem to be the only people that are pointing out that elephant in the room.
We have to take a break. Christo Fuvas, thank you so much for joining us. We'll take some calls after the break. Is the rise of Reform UK going to be the end of the Conservative Party? Do you want to see Nigel Farage effectively replace the Conservative Party in this election? So we asked, according to a survey, what is the nation's favourite salad? And we gave you those 3. And the answer is the first one, Caesar. interviewed Rishi Sunak recently and said Farage is like a roast Sunday lunch with Yorkshire pudding, and you are like a quinoa salad.
Who said that to who?
An interviewer said it to Rishi Sunak, and I thought, I don't know what that. I'm not.
I kind of understand it.
What does it mean?
Okay, roast dinner, very English in their approach, old-fashioned,
Red
staunch.
beef.
Yeah, and Rishi Sunak, a bit of a soy boy,
Lettucey.
quinoa.
Okay, yeah, I see. So sort of light and it's nothing
Not much to
there.
it, but-
Not much to it. Okay. Your calls on the Reform Party, are they sinking the Tory ship? 0207 862 222. You may be a Labour supporter, you say it's brilliant. Or you may say, no, wait, we don't want an opposition if that's what happens with Farage leading the Conservatives effectively. Let's talk to Scott in Argyll and Butte. Where are you on this, Scott?
I think Farage will end both parties eventually. Maybe not at this election, but both. He will eventually end both parties. I would love to see Farage as Prime Minister.
OK, stay there. We've got Lee in East Sussex. Do you want to see Farage as Prime Minister, Lee?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, for me, and the gentleman's entirely entitled to his opinion, so I'm not going to be rude, but to me, Farage is your classic politician who preys on deprivation. So you look at the areas that often vote Reform the highest, they're actually areas with the lowest levels of migration. So you take Clapton, for instance, I think it's like 98% white British, but it's 70% deprived. So maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but it's the Adolf Hitler model to take disaffected people and use migrants as a scapegoat. I grew up in an area with high migration, highly multicultural area. I'm not going to say it didn't cause community cohesion issues, but generally a very, very happy community, a Labour community.
Okay, let me go back to Scott. Hang on, let's just go back to Scott. What about that, Scott? The people who want to stop immigration are in areas where there isn't any.
That is absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Up here in Scotland, there's a vast amount of people who don't want immigration. And let me tell you, there's many areas in Scotland who don't have immigration. But let's be truthful. We have to put a stop to immigration. We cannot accommodate these people.
Well,
why not?
Phil says, why not?
Why not? I mean, we need them for our health service, for our care services. The 700,000 net immigration, they were given work permits for jobs. You know, we're not talking about the people coming over on the boats. That's a small number of asylum seekers, refugees. We're talking of 700,000 who were given work permits to come and work here in jobs.
No, some of them
many in the health service.
Some of the 700,000 are mums and dads of students.
Dependent as well. All right, so they come without their wives and children.
We have to be specific on the type of immigration we're talking about. You're right. You're absolutely right. The health service would not be able to function if tomorrow all those migrants left. However, also what is true, we are not building enough infrastructure to be able to facilitate the number of migrants coming in.
So
both can be right.
We blame foreigners. We blame, as ever, we blame foreigners as Farage and his party and extreme right parties do.
Hang on, Scott wants to come back. Scott, what were you saying?
Right. Yes, we do need some immigration on certain patients. And I'm the first to admit, we have a generation want to work to tell them to university, do a day's work.
OK, the line's breaking up. Thank you. Francis in Surrey, hi.
Can I just say a powerful thing?
Francis?
Yeah.
Sorry, you're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've always been a staunch Conservative voter, but will now be voting for Reform.
Right, so you're one of those who's causing them to be breathing down Rishi Sunak's neck?
Yes.
And which seat are you in?
Pardon?
Which constituency are you in?
Caterham on the Hill.
So Tory, I'm guessing?
Absolutely, yes.
So do you think you might have a situation where by voting for Reform, the Lib Dems get in?
No, I don't think it's happened. No, I just think we've all had enough of the governments that we've had over the last 14 years.
Right.
I agree.
So you want to see what, Farage into Parliament and then he becomes the Conservative leader?
Yes. No, not a Conservative leader. I'd just like to see the Reform Party with Nigel Farage as its leader and putting this country back to rights.
All right, so you want to see them as a government. OK, yeah.
Well, that's
a stretch.
not going to happen, is it?
That's a stretch.
That's just not going to happen, because mainly because not because of the way you're going to vote, Francis. You can vote however you want, but it's not going to happen because our electoral system. Farage has stood for Parliament, is it 7 times, and failed to get in. He might get in this time. It's highly likely, even if they get the sort of polling average that we see in that poll, that they end up with no other MPs. It's quite possible that Labour could get 40% of the vote and 90% of the seats if it goes on like this.
Well, I mean, it's
our electoral system will deliver.
A lot of the parties are suggesting that we change our electoral system.
Well,
and if we do, then
there will be cries for that, won't there?
Well, Labour will, if Labour get 400 seats, which the polls suggest they will, they will be able to do what the hell they want. So if they want to bring in PR, but it's the bizarre thing about our system that the party who wins 400 seats...
They won't want to bring in PR,
thinks,
will they?
we've suddenly decided we don't like PR very much. You know?
Exactly.
I think later we'll get uprising,
that's the thing.
though.
So, Francis, thank you. I think you do. Your MP was Claire Coutinho, so she is a Conservative. Let's see how she fares in Caterham and East Surrey. Bob in Hertfordshire, hi.
Hello, Jeremy.
So we're sort of wargaming this, aren't we? We're thinking that maybe Labour win, maybe the Conservatives are the opposition, but maybe Farage has 3 or 4 musketeers in there. Do you want to see him basically take over the Conservative Party?
No, I don't. And a lot of people are falling for Farage again. They fell for it in 2016. And for Brexit, and they're going to maybe try and fall for it again. It would be the worst thing for this country even if he got into Parliament. It's personality politics. Can I just say a quick thing on Rishi, in support of Rishi?
Of course.
Last week in the D-Day thing, he left at the end of the British commemoration services. He didn't go to the American one in the afternoon. I just want to point out that there was no American representation at the British commemoration.
No, and also it was a bit of a G7 thing that he wasn't at. But the thing is this, the photo was Schulz from Germany, Biden from the USA, Macron from France, and blooming David Cameron. I mean, how could he miss that?
It would have been better if he went, but I want to point out there was no American representation at our services.
It's fair comment. And you know what? These elections are unfair, aren't they, in a way? Because it's like an image.
They
like
everything,
Gordon Brown with his head in his hands, whatever. All right, thank you, Bob. This is so fascinating. Sylvia in Durham, we've spoken before. I'm thinking you're a Labour voter, Sylvia, yes?
Yes, through and through.
Through and through. I did think so.
Through my body, Jeremy.
Say again?
Red blood going through my veins.
If you're North Durham, you would have a Conservative MP, though, correct?
Kevin Jones.
Oh, OK. So tell us what you think about Farage and whether you would like to see him be the opposition leader after this election.
I actually think that this general election is going to throw up an awful lot of surprises. Do I like Nigel Farage? No, I think he's a horrible human being. The simple fact is he likes that Trump in America. That proves everything to me. But I think Conservatives signed their own death warrant from Mr Cameron right down to Richie Sunak because of the way they've behaved in this country. They have totally put it into the gutter with the rats. And now we are a laughingstock right around the country. As your gentleman says on the panel, there are people going hungry. We have got young children now going to hospital with rickets.
Come back after that. We've got to take the break now. So one rule of the day is we have to take a break now. Stay there. We'll get the end of your sentence after the break. We're live on My 5 as well. Lynn and Phil are with us. Oh, yes, Sylvia in Durham. Sorry, the last thing you said there was that the government we've had over the last 14 years has taken this country into the gutter with the rats.
Yeah, well, the gentleman on your panel said was on about basic things like our children not getting the proper foods. And this is true because there's an amazing amount of young children going into hospital now with rickets. Yeah, now, that's not right. Just to say,
before we just plough into the government, they say that when they arrived, that Labour left a note saying there's no money. And indeed, there was not. So that's why they had to have austerity.
Well, I don't think whoever gets in, I'm a Labour girl through and through, and I always will be. But saying that, it doesn't matter who gets into government this time. They are going to find it extremely hard to pull this country back up to where it should be.
Well, then how would you do it? Because you've got to cut somewhere big. You've got to decide the government doesn't do Trident. It doesn't do public health. We're not going to do, what do you do? What do you cut?
The first thing we need to do in this country is get our National Health Service up and running again. Because if we don't have our health, Jeremy, we have nothing.
But we've put more money than ever into it, and it's failing, and it may have even failed on a permanent basis, and I don't know what to do about it.
But not just that, Sylvia. If you look at what supports us, it's actually growth. And the Labour Party have not had anything to suggest to get the country going with growth.
Well, they keep saying growth. In fairness, they do
but
keep
how, though?
Well, I don't know. I think you pray for it, basically, don't you? I mean, the only other way is the Liz Truss way, which is where you've got the train and you've got the furnace and you just put all the coal into the train furnace and hope it goes faster. And in her case, it blew up.
No growth, no assistance to the public.
She blew the train
sector.
up.
That's
Sylvia, we're all sort of suddenly realising this. Maybe no one can run this country, Sylvia. What about that?
Well, Jeremy, there's one person who could run this country very successfully, and that's our own.
That's who?
Owen, who comes onto your
Jones?
panel occasionally. Yes.
Okay. There, our Owen. All right, thank you, Sylvia. We will save that little clip, and next time he's in, we'll play that too.